if you cloned yourself at work and gave the clone a promotion, is that an HR violation?
Wow, okay. So the first thing I immediately thought about before you said anything else, and you just said, if you cloned yourself, I thought, finally, I'm getting rid of all the video editing work, because that's kind of the worst part. But I guess it wouldn't be that nice to because I think if you clone yourself, you would give your clone all of the stuff that you don't want to do at your job, I guess. And if it's the same version of you that would have to do that person also wouldn't be too happy with that. So I guess it would be kind of... So you're not in the HR position, right? You're just an employee or something? Or how does this scenario play out exactly?
You can play it out however you want, I guess. I don't think we didn't really
because
get into the...
I can only apply it to what I'm doing now, and I'm doing most of my work alone. So I would have just another version of me sitting next to me that's thinking exactly like I'm thinking, and I would tell him, hey, you edit this video, I want to record the next one. And he would probably say, no, I want to do the next video, you edit this one. So would kind of be back and forth. Mostly, and I don't have an HR department, so I don't know how this would play out. But it's a pretty good. Who asked this question? Who was your last guest?
Finn McEntee. You know.
Okay. Yeah, I know him. Yeah.
Yeah. You can go and listen to the last podcast, because the question he was going to ask, I was like, I can't ask that.
Oh no. Okay.
So there was a couple. I was like, it was along the cloning lines. You can use your imagination as to what sort of things that went into. But I suppose if you work by yourself, then you promote the clone, then you're working for the clone.
Yes.
Because then if you promoted them, then technically you'd be like working for them. So they would be telling you what to do, I guess.
That's a crazy kind of loophole to think about, especially if the clone is thinking exactly how you're thinking. Because I think most people, when they think about cloning, they think about having some guy that just does all the dirty work, basically, that you don't want to do. But if the clone is thinking exactly like you're thinking, I don't think that will work out. Probably.
It makes me think of that.
Interesting.
Makes me think of, Ex Machina or Machina, I don't know how
to
say it. It kind of makes me think of that. Like how the, well, she's not a clone, is she? But the AI sort of person thinks. So, yeah. The sort of going. There's no sensible way I can turn this into some sort of conversation that I had planned. It's the only thing with the more interesting questions. But something I was kind of, when I was looking through your videos and the stuff you kind of do, the theme that I kind of picked up on, or that I kind of felt like it sort of come about, was this sort of like creativity through some sort of restriction. Whether it be like, I saw, for example, you sort of filled your guitar with water, or drilling holes in it or something like that, which on the surface is obviously just like entertaining for anyone kind of watching. But a big part of, I think, staying creative is finding ways to sort of almost corner yourself and go, how can I work with like the situation I've got? Is that like something you're conscious of when it comes to like writing and being creative with things like that? Do you actively think this restrictive thing that I'm doing, whatever it is going to help me with the songwriting, or is it more just doing it for the fun of it? Where's the kind of balance with that?
It's mostly just intrusive thoughts, giving into intrusive thoughts, because I've looked at acoustic guitars all the time and at this hole, and I think we all had this thought at one point: what if I fill this guitar with, doesn't have to be water, it could be anything really. And I just wanted to find out what happens one day, because I had. It's kind of a special guitar to me, actually, that I did this with, because I played my most important show with it at the Donauinselfest in Vienna. And we had 120,000 people or something in front of the stage, because it's a free concert and people love free concerts. And actually the electronics broke on that guitar, so I couldn't really use it that much anymore. And we tried to fix it over and over again, but we just couldn't get it to work. And I had this guitar just lying around and just wanted to give it a try. And with all of these kind of experiments that you mentioned that I did so far, also drilling holes into a guitar and doing all of this crazy stuff, where I'm generally curious myself about what happens when you do that. I'm never, first of all, sure if it works out in any way, if I can use the video in any way, shape or form, because maybe it just doesn't work or it sounds terrible. I scrapped a couple of videos already that didn't work, or that just, where it didn't really get an effect. That's kind of cool for a viewer to watch. But what you mentioned is the creative process and the songwriting. I'm pretty sure that I would have never written those songs if it weren't for those experiments, because with the water guitar, it kind of I started moving around a little bit rhythmically, and you could hear the water splashing a little bit. And for some reason, the song turned out kind of sad. It's not exactly a happy song, because I was thinking about basically not really playing that guitar ever again, because it was kind of falling apart already. You can't see in the video, but I had a lot of towels. I was sitting on towels basically because it was leaking, of course, all the time. And the intonation was off at the end, and I wasn't sure if I could use the tuning. So I really love doing those experiments. I never know what happens when I do these videos. And I think it's closely connected with the creative aspect and with the song that you get out of that. As you said, it's I don't know if it's restrictive really, because you could play anything on that guitar, but your mind kind of tells you where to go so that it fits the theme of the video. So because the songs are obviously also always the song titles are a pun, like the guitar with the holes, the song is called Airflow. The guitar with the water, it's called Waterworks. So I think this definitely does go in a specific direction once the experiment starts, so to say.
Yeah,
that's a cool thing. Yeah, about it for me.
When how do you kind of stay so sort of creative? Because I know that obviously there's that pressure, especially to build an audience, to keep up the content and keep with the cycle and everything. What do you do if you're not feeling creative? Are there like tools that you kind of have that you can use, whether it be mental things or things you need to do during the day or whatever to sort of stay creative? Do you have things that help you in that regard?
The most important skill that I had to learn, that took a long time to understand, is that I always had this kind of pressure in me to always work on videos. And if I don't work on videos, I feel unproductive and I feel like I should do something to move my career forward and to just move the channel forward and the music and all of that. But I often gave in the past to this feeling without having a really good idea. So you just sit down for 5 minutes, you write down 4 or 5 ideas that aren't exactly great, but once you start working on them, you feel productive because, this is the video for next week and I'm on schedule and I'm on time. And then you get really disappointed because the video doesn't perform at all because the idea is pretty bad. So it's what I had to discover, or what I had to learn, is just to not give into that. I have to release every week and just work. It definitely pays off to just spend one day, usually on Sundays, to just sit down, or even on Mondays if I don't have a great idea, to really just sit down and think about what you could do. And sometimes you have to sit the entire day and think about different things, because it's not only the idea that needs to be great, it also needs to work on a thumbnail, of course, because people don't know if the video is going to be great if they don't click on it. So you need a good title and thumbnail on YouTube. And all of these things are kind of hard to combine, to have this idea that you can turn into a great title and thumbnail that could also result in a cool song, because you can totally, set a guitar on fire or something, and it might look great on an image, but I can't make a cool song out of that because it's going to be hard to play that guitar, I guess. So that's the most difficult thing, making all of those pieces of the puzzle fit every week. And I would just recommend to anyone who's kind of struggling with keeping up. I think a lot of TikTok creators feel like they have to upload every single day or twice a day even, which is absolutely crazy. So if you're talking about YouTube here specifically, the most important mindset trick is kind of not giving into this. I have to upload as much as possible and rather focusing on great ideas. But I wish I had some kind of formula, as you mentioned, that would work for coming up with an idea so that it only takes 1 hour. Sometimes it takes the entire day. And some ideas are better than others. I don't know if you have a tip for me, if you had a guest that had some kind of great tool or mindset trick when it comes to that, the creative process.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't know if I've had any. I've had plenty of creative people on. People that are consistently creative, but I think everyone kind of does it differently. The main thing for me is just like healthy body, healthy mind at the moment. That's been my main focus. Like, trying to look after myself physically, sure. And mentally, like, trying to find certain things, sort of balance the right aspects in life. So, health and fitness, diet, but then also like social life and, finding a balance in that part of my life so that I feel optimally kind of when I sit down, I'm really excited to sit down and do whatever musical or podcast or just generally creative thing. I think that for me, that's a big part of it. And sometimes also just, starting with an idea and rolling with it. I find for me, I don't do much in the way of video, like YouTube videos. I do the podcast, but when it comes to like writing songs, the other thing for me is just starting with an idea and giving myself, say, I'm going to do it in 15 minutes. That's going to give me the, basic idea and then developing from there. Because I think you can spend like an hour or two just not procrastinating, but just sort of rolling through, 10, 20 ideas and not really liking any of them, but actually going, oh, this idea is not great, but I can work on it. I think the skill of like working on a not so great idea is important. So I guess it would be like going, okay, if you come up with some YouTube video idea and you don't think it's that exciting, but it's like there might be something exciting about the idea that you could make, that you could improve, I guess. And then suddenly it does become a good idea. And I think a lot of people, they dismiss ideas too early without working on them. Because especially with songwriting, you come up with a cool little lick and there's probably, the reason you spend an hour working with it and then you go, oh, I don't like that anyway. But there's probably something there that you like. And I think figuring out what you like about things and then being able to hone in on that and develop that is really important. I don't think enough people do that. I think people just chuck things that they don't like, which, I don't know. I think you need that skill, especially if you're not feeling creative one day. You have to be able to push through it, I think, rather than just dismissing ideas. I don't know if that kind of resonates with you at all. Yeah,
that's a great point, actually, because not everything always has to be an absolute masterpiece all the time. Even if you write a song and you maybe don't publish it or just publish a small part of it ends up in a different song or something, I still think it's great exercise to do that, because I'm on the schedule at the moment since the beginning of the year of releasing a song every week, because I just wanted to try that out. And it's been working absolutely great, because Spotify is really interesting for me, because it's essentially turning into another social media platform where you have followers. You have an algorithm that's kind of similar to what's happening on YouTube or on Instagram or on any social media platform, really. So it made no sense to me to release 12 songs every 3 or 4 years. You wouldn't really do that with a YouTube channel or an Instagram account. So doing that every week and not expecting the biggest hit every week. So not pressuring yourself to, okay, the next song next week has to have more streams than the song from last week, and expecting that to build. That's kind of unrealistic. But as you said, not completely throwing away songs that you wouldn't publish. If this was the first song you would release after 2 years or something like that, I think that has made me much, much better, because it's like with guitar technique or with music theory, also the creative aspect and the songwriting, I think, is a skill that needs to be practiced a lot. And definitely didn't hurt to release some of the songs, because one of them you mentioned, Waterworks, which is actually my most successful song yet. I wasn't really sure about releasing it because it was one of the first ones I mixed myself. And I didn't study sound engineering or anything like that. I just learned from being in the studio a lot and watching a lot of great producers here in Austria. And I really wasn't sure about the mix, and I'm not sure about what I was doing. And I thought maybe it's not a great idea to release that. Maybe I should get it re-recorded, remixed to the entire video again. But I'm happy that I did it in that case because it really paid off. It was the most successful project so far. So if anyone's kind of struggling and, if anyone has a library of 150 unreleased songs at home because none of them are quote unquote good enough yet, I would also highly suggest to just release them and just see what's happening instead of deleting everything all the time.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something said for just getting the ideas out. I think you can sit around. I'm trying to work on my singing quite a lot, and that's quite a sort of vulnerable thing, and to trying to put that out there. And I find it difficult to find a song or even a collection of songs, one song, let alone a collection that I can sing comfortably, because I have quite a low singing voice. So all of the songs that go a bit higher, especially like rock singers, when they're sort of pushing the higher notes, I can go the octave lower, but then it's a bit like you can't get the energy, so I'm trying to find, but then sometimes I'm like, maybe I should just try something and just put it out, and I don't have to make a big fuss about it, just get it out there, and then it exists and I've done it, and I think it creates that forward momentum that you need. I know as well the thing you touched on, the idea of like practicing songwriting. I think so many guitarists practice everything in the technical or theoretical world and then expect to write really great songs because they can whiz around the guitar or they know all these different chords and chord changes. Obviously those are like super important, but they're maybe not as important as practicing your songwriting if you want to write songs. Obviously they're important, depends what your goals are, right? But I think that's something that maybe people don't sort of recognize. I'm just going to go and shut my door real quick, so I think some noise is coming from the other. Give me 10 seconds. I'll be back
10 seconds, yes.
I don't know how many seconds that was.
Exactly 10. I'm sure it was 10.
Okay.
I can't imagine.
So the idea of practicing songwriting is that, do you actively practice writing music, or do you think just by writing a song every week like you have been doing, does that count as sort of practice in itself?
I think that's what helped me the most with it, for sure. Because as you said, I think it's difficult to, or at least it's easier to practice technique because you feel like you're doing something useful, you're pushing your guitar skills to become a better guitar player. But for, I think, a lot of people, it feels like kind of working on a hobby to practice songwriting. It's difficult to set those parameters like I'm gonna work 1 hour on songwriting, and then maybe you don't even have one riff because you can't come up with something cool. Whereas when you work on technique, you can clearly say I'm working 15 minutes on sweep picking, 15 minutes on alternate picking, then 15 minutes on this theory topic. So I think that's really hard to put into a practice plan, actually, because if you feel really creative and you only have 1 hour to work on it and you have the best idea of your life, but then after 1 hour you have to leave and do something else, that's really, really difficult, I think, to see that in a classic guitar practice routine that lasts for, 1, 2, 3 hours or something like this. So for me, the best way so far has been just forcing myself really to release a song every week and to have that deadline and to be consistent with it, because it's not really, I haven't felt pressured so far in those 7 months now, a little over 7 months. There wasn't any intense pressure on me. I mean, if I miss one upload, I don't think a lot of people would notice immediately and text me and, hey, where's that song you promised? I'm gonna unfollow you forever now. So it's not that serious, but it has helped me so much, not only with songwriting, also with producing and mixing and mastering, all of that stuff, because that was something I was always really scared about, because I always had this mindset, you need an expert with this. You can't do it yourself. You need the best producer in the world. And producers are very, very relevant, and I've seen what they can do and how they can transform songs. But I think with the tools we have nowadays, it's just so cool and so interesting that you can do it yourself and get pretty good sounding results once you dig a little bit into how all of that stuff works. And I did a couple of courses, and it's just exciting for me to do the whole project from start to finish myself. And when I listen to my mixes and songs from the start of the year, there's already a huge difference with everything. So I hope I can keep this up for a couple of years, because seems to get better, I hope, I think. Of course, the songs are always, it always depends on people, if people connect with the song. If the YouTube video for the song is blowing up and it's reaching a lot of people organically, it's also going to do better on the streaming platforms. So there are always a lot of factors, but I think the quality is definitely improving because I never did this so far, as you mentioned. I was also very focused on technique and theory, not so much on the creative aspect in the practice routines.
Yeah, it's like what you said earlier, just having a good idea in the first place, you know, like you've got to put your ladder up against the right wall, I guess they say, you know, it's the same kind of deal. With sort of creating, obviously YouTube and Spotify as well, they're such saturated markets. Do you find that kind of, talking about sort of some sort of restriction or something that you almost, an obstacle that you can always put in your own way to create something? Do you think that sort of saturated market and that kind of very competitive sort of element of these online platforms, do you think that's what has sort of encouraged you to be creative in a more outside of the box way, or do you just naturally gravitate towards more outside of the box sort of thinking?
I think especially on YouTube, as you mentioned, you see, I mean, everyone nowadays has a YouTube channel, of course, every guitar player. And this is a platform where you really have to stand out in some kind of way in order to build a following, because it has, I mean, it's kind of common knowledge by now, but it used to blow me away, those small revelations as a small YouTuber, to learn about how much a title and thumbnail matters and how much generating curiosity actually matters. So even big guitar channels can't really post a video saying song number 12 or something like that. If you're a huge guitar player, still a couple of people would click on that. But if you spend more time on the idea and making that interesting, it's going to be much more successful. And what you mentioned is kind of my favorite kind of thought game that I like to play with myself. It's everyone gets a chance nowadays, which is really exciting. But of course, as you mentioned, it's also oversaturated. So there are a lot of people who kind of think back to the old days. We're all getting old. I'm sure you also had a couple of CDs and all of that stuff, and what we now call the old school kind of music industry. A lot of people romanticized it a little bit, and say it was easier, there were less artists, you would make more money, of course, selling CDs and physical products or something like this. But when I think back to that, it was pretty terrible for an independent artist, because you had to go in the studio, it cost a lot of money to actually make that product, and after, 1 or 2 years, you had, 100, 150 CDs that you saved up for at home, and that's it. It's kind of the end. That was always the end of the journey for my hobby bands 20 years ago, that you had this thing and nobody would buy it because nobody knows about it. So I think it's much, much more interesting now. I love that everyone gets a chance, and that even subscribers on YouTube don't matter anymore. If you have a really good idea, the perfect title and thumbnail, people actually watch the video until the end, and you have 5 subscribers, the video will blow up, which is really interesting. Because YouTube used to work like you need a lot of subscribers, and then those subscribers get your video recommended. But nowadays, I don't know if you're browsing YouTube a lot, but when I'm opening up the YouTube homepage, there are mostly small guitar channels that have 50 or 60 views on their videos that get recommended a lot. And I like to check them out, actually, because everyone's a great guitar player nowadays with all the resources. So I think to me, it's really exciting, the fact that everyone kind of gets a chance as long as the ideas are great. I try to see the positive things always. I'm just kind of that way.
Yeah, I'm going to recruit you for some business advice then. So with my podcast, I do 2 episodes a week. Mm-hmm. So try and keep the frequency quite high, because it's not, and obviously part of why I do it is just it keeps me busy and I like doing it, and then part is because the more my name can pop up and the podcast can pop up on all the social media, the better. But the difficulty I find is, obviously, I'm putting up videos that are like an hour long, mainly. I do little clips as well, which seem to do okay. So what I do when I title them at the moment, I've not decided on the order yet, but I normally would go the name of the person and then whatever band they're in, it's sort of in brackets. Mm-hmm. And then I'd go, and then I put a few keywords of things we talk about that I think are interesting in the title. And then I'll just put like E for like episode, whatever, 100 and whatever we're on. I think it's 114.
Wow. Okay. It's a lot of episodes.
Done quite a few. Cool. Yeah.
Nice.
And that it does okay, but it's quite reliant on the people, on the artist sharing it at the moment. That's something I really rely on to drive, sort of drive the channel. What would be your advice for like, for this podcast, for example, if you were releasing this on your channel, what do you think you would title it and how would you lay it all out? This is just a very selfish question, but it might be interesting for someone who's doing a similar thing.
For me, it's also really interesting because there was kind of this thought of doing something similar to this a lot of times so far, but I always got stuck with it because, as you said, I think with a podcast, it's really important, probably more important than with what I'm doing, to release on at least a weekly basis. The more the better, of course, because when people are fans of a show, they want to follow it. I don't know what your fans are doing while they are listening to podcasts. I'm mostly on the bike or going running or something like this. And I have a couple of podcasts that I like, and I always check who has a new episode, and that's what I will listen to. So if someone wouldn't post an episode for a month, that would be pretty rough, probably. People forget quickly about their favorite creators even, I guess. In my case, on my channel, I don't have a lot of experience when it comes to very long videos, to 1 hour videos. So what I would do, I guess, if I would do an hour-long interview is, as you mentioned already, on TikTok and Instagram Reels and all of that, those shorts are really performing great as long as they have some kind of subtitles, and start with a crazy question or something right away that kind of hooks your interest, like the one you asked me at the start of the podcast. I think that's really interesting. And on my channel, I would probably go for the most interesting. I don't know if I would go, I guess you would have to go for that kind of titling scheme for the entire episode, to call it episode XYZ, guest this and that. But if I would post individual clips that would not be reels, just really short videos, could also be 4 or 5 minute videos, it would be kind of interesting to just focus on a question that's super interesting. And I don't know if the thumbnail even has to be that classic, okay, there are 2 guys left and right, and this is clearly a podcast scenario. I don't know if it has to look at like that at all. I would try to see what happens if it's not clear that it's a podcast video right away, just an interesting question that you want the answer for, a nice, very bright thumbnail, because that's something I also tested, bright versus dark thumbnails. The bright ones are usually much more eye-catching with saturated colors and all of that. I would try to figure out some kind of trademark thumbnail style. And it's not like people click away immediately when they see, this is a podcast. Those are 2 people talking. If you hook them and they're interested and they clicked on it, I think they will also watch it if it's entertaining, at least. So I would try to, as you mentioned already, think a little bit outside the box, maybe, because probably the podcast world is also pretty competitive, I would imagine, by now, also in the music world. Yeah. So maybe that could be something to kind of think of it as a quote-unquote more normal YouTube video, not giving away that it's a podcast right away with short clips, and just trying completely different thumbnail strategies and see if people click on that. Because I also started posting my songs Bernth, song name, official music video. I still do that here and there. But of course, it's not as interesting as I fill my guitar with water and then you show it clearly in the thumbnail and bring out the colors and make it look really interesting and implying that it sounds pretty crazy and that you're surprised by the sound yourself. So I'm sure that this kind of formula can be done for any kind of content, really.
Yeah,
I think so, at least.
It's got me thinking, maybe, yeah. I think what I might... Yeah, you have got me thinking. Yeah, approaching it as a more conventional just approaching it like you would if it was just a normal YouTube video. If I'd planned out a 10 or 15-minute video, and because at the moment it's like me and the other person. It's like you said, and then there's a little icon in the corner, and then I have the name along the bottom. It's quite colourful and punchy, I guess, but it's you know, if you don't want to sign up for a podcast, I don't know if you would click on it, you know. So I'll see if I can figure out.
I would love to hear about that. Actually, it's really interesting. I mean, I think it's a great idea to do it this way for the long podcast episodes, because I think people, if they see a 1 hour video, they will realize that it's something like this, probably like a podcast or an interview or something like that.
Yeah.
But for the short videos, it would be really interesting to see if there's any kind of, because even if it doesn't work right away, you could try a completely different title approach. Because it could be done with yourself on the thumbnail and some kind of topic illustrated with some kind of graphic design stuff. It could be just a question. I mean, there are some crazy low quality thumbnails on YouTube that do so well simply because they're interesting. It's really hard to find your kind of, or not really your kind of trademark, more like the stuff that your audience is interested in. That's really difficult, because I always thought quality goes first. You need the most professional thumbnail anyone has ever seen. So I used to blow them up in Photoshop on a big screen and look at all the details, and didn't really think about that it's this small on the phone and you can't see anything that I did, because it's like this almost a painting with all those details. A lot of people just have some kind of text that's stretched and looks completely just wrong, but it catches your eye somehow. It's really interesting for me to see, and I would love to find some kind of literature on that, why that works, or why people click on some things and don't click on other things. It's really, really interesting for me, because I think I made not as many videos as you made so far. I think I made around 500 or 600 on YouTube, and I still don't have a viral video every single week like a person like Mr. Beast has, because he definitely figured out how YouTube works. But I'm getting closer to understanding it, but often I still have videos where I think I have the perfect title, perfect thumbnail, perfect video subject, everything about this is great. And then it ends up underperforming because I just misjudged the interest my audience would have in this. So it's kind of a never-ending. As you said, you have to practice songwriting, technique, theory. I guess this is also something you should practice.
Yeah.
And experiment with, for sure.
Yeah, I always, because I guess just naturally as being a musician, I always kind of, anything that's time away from something creative, I always do it quite begrudgingly. I'm like, oh, I've got to do a thumbnail or whatever.
Yes.
So I'm trying to find that balance where I do put the effort and the time into it, but I don't want to spend all day working on a thumbnail, because to me, it's just not worth the time in my day to do that. I'd happily do it on occasion, but I can't be spending hours working on a thumbnail, because there's other priorities I have in life, Yeah, so I don't know where to sort of figure that out. But like, speaking of, I was watching that, I know you did a short little sort of Q&A video, and you talked about sort of getting up very early and sort of getting your sort of guitar practice in quite early in the day. And then I'm guessing just through all the pursuits you have that you're pretty busy throughout the day, that it's a pretty tight schedule. What have you learned about managing your time and sort of prioritizing what's important?
That's really, really, really interesting for me, because I started this project. I like to refer to it as a project, because it was just a challenge that I tried out, and I never really planned on it to last this long, because I think I'm doing it for around 3 years, or maybe 4 years now, that I get up at 4:30 a.m. simply because of that exact reason that you mentioned of time management. And I never really knew where to put my guitar practice time, because when I wake up at 7 or 8 or 9 or something like that, I always felt like I have to start working right away, and practicing and improving on the instrument never really felt like work. It always felt a bit more like fun. So I always felt a little bit guilty about practicing too much when I should prepare for a show that's coming up, or I should work on this project, or I have an appointment coming up that I should prepare for. And this kind of solved everything for me, because at the moment I get up at 4:30 and I start practicing right away. I brush my teeth first, of course, but then I start practicing for around 2.5 hours, just not really working on songs or anything like that, or practicing any live set, just really focusing on becoming a better guitar player as much as I can. And then I have breakfast, then I do my emails, then I do a bit of sport. And when I'm done with all that, it's, I think, around 8 a.m. or something like this. And that feels like a great time of the day to just start work without feeling like, oh, it's already 1 p.m. and I have to do all of these things. So that solved a lot of problems for me. And I still work until 6 p.m. because there's a lot to do. So I just have 2 or 3 hours kind of to myself, Monday through Saturday. And I don't do that much on Sundays because I'm usually a bit burnt out by then. But I think the main thing that prevented me from making the progress that I'm making right now was drinking in the first place, because I often attempted it in the past to get kind of a routine going. But when you're self-employed and you don't have a boss that kicks you in the ass for showing up late to work, it's kind of difficult to force yourself to do it. And then when you get drunk, you don't really feel like getting up the next day. And then this kind of schedule that you built for yourself is ruined. So just this getting up early thing and just quitting everything else, no drinking, no more partying for me. Also on tour for 3 or 4 years now. That was a huge turning point for anything that I did. I mean, I started on YouTube. I think I really started out, 3 or 4 years ago, before the pandemic, taking it seriously. So I've not been there for a very long time. And I think I couldn't have done it with my previous kind of mindset of getting wasted 1 or 2 days every week or every day on tour, of course, because there's a party. Someone is in the mood for a party all the time when you have a crew of 20, 30 people. So that's the main reason why I do it. I know that it's a little bit, it has kind of become cringy for a lot of people because there are all these self-help podcasts and the time gets earlier and earlier. It used to be you get up at 5 a.m. Now you have to get up at 3 a.m. and you have to do all this and work out for 15 hours and then do that for... So I know that a lot of people are making fun of that by now. Also, I don't know if you know these morning routine videos that are obviously staged, where it's always like, I wake up at 3, then I work out for 5 hours, and then I drive in my Lamborghini and think about my business and all of that. Yeah. So I don't want to be that guy. I really don't like that. But I can just really recommend, especially I can recommend it to people that always tell me that they don't find the right time of the day to practice because they feel burnt out after work when they come home. Or they obviously don't have time during the day because they have to work on something else. I would just really recommend giving it a try, even if it really hurts in the first weeks to get up at this time of the day. But if you sleep a little bit earlier, it's not like I stay up until 12. I also go to bed at 9 p.m. So I still get in my around 7 hours of sleep. I would just recommend giving it a try.
Yeah. I used to do 5 a.m. but
nice.
I was in a student house and you can't get to sleep before like 10 p.m.
That's
like
bad.
Earliest. And then also I teach guitar until about 9 p.m. most evenings now. So there's no way I can fall asleep like with, I need at least a couple of hours just to like wind down. And I'm not one of those people that can work off of a small amount of sleep. I have to get, otherwise I mean, I can do it, but I feel very unproductive, if I don't get my sleep in. So I normally try and get up at 8 o'clock. That's just like pretty standard because I go to bed around just before midnight and then get up at 8 and try and get my 8 hours in. I feel like it, I don't know, you see all these, like you said, videos where the guys will be getting like 5 or 6 hours sleep a night. And I just like, I couldn't do that. I just don't.
No, if it starts feeling unhealthy, it's definitely not the right thing to do. Because as you said, it doesn't matter if you're getting up super early and you don't have any energy to do anything really, and especially the creative stuff takes a lot of energy, not physically maybe, you're not running around in your room writing songs most of the time, but it's still very draining to work on that stuff. So I wouldn't recommend that in any way. And I also, I mean, I don't have any kind of hack or secret hack by getting up early. I have the exact same amount of hours to work, and there are a lot of extremely productive people who like to work into the night, mostly producers that I know. They start their day, I don't know, at 2 p.m. or 1 p.m., but they work the exact same hours as I do because they work until, I don't know, in sometime in the night, and it feels awesome for them to do that. So it's not like this is better in any way. It's just something I found for myself that works, and I never really thought about changing it so far. Only on tour, because as you mentioned, also if you live with a lot of people, especially on a bus, it really doesn't work to get up this early. Also, when you have to play shows until midnight or something, I would never just stick with it because I have to make that post every day or something. So sleeping is important. For sure.
Sort of slight change of subject, but so you're based in Vienna, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I went to. I've spent 2 days in Vienna. So basically, no, I don't know the place at all really. But it was I think one of the most, if not the nicest city that I'd been to in Europe. I went to a few different places, and I found it was so. Everything was just very. I don't know, all the architecture I thought was really nice, and just the way the city was sort of designed, and there were so many great places to go. I was only there for a couple of days, but I'd love to go back.
Cool.
How do you feel like, obviously, especially from being on tour, having, seen all sorts of places, how would you compare life where you are to sort of the other places you visited? And also, what's the sort of music scene like there as well?
It's pretty interesting because the band I play in is only known in Austria and especially in Vienna. And we did that for 10 years now. We've been with these guys for 10 years. So I have a completely different relationship to this country, because most of the touring that I did with those guys was in Austria and in Germany, because it's a German-speaking band. So for me, it's a little bit the other way around. Every time I go to the US, for example, a couple of months ago, I went to LA and I had 1.5 weeks of just meeting people and meeting very interesting people, which was really, really cool for me. And so that was more exciting for me. And I talked to a lot of people, and they, just like you said, they said they heard all of those great things about Vienna and the architecture and all of that. But it's, I guess, really hard to appreciate it if I'm not born in Vienna, but I moved here a long time ago because I came from a relatively small city. It's kind of hard to really appreciate it if you see it every day. I try very hard to look at all this stuff, but I've seen it so often so that it's not that interesting anymore. And we are actually thinking about moving next year to Los Angeles, because there are some interesting opportunities for me there. The music scene in Austria is really cool concerning this project that I got to work with, because those are essentially 2 pop singers that absolutely nailed the Austrian kind of lifestyle and what Austrians want to hear. So the first record we made together is 5 times platinum in Austria, I think now. And they just announced the show a couple of months ago at the ending of the year in the biggest venue in Austria, and it's almost sold out already. I think there will be 15,000 people or something there.
Wow! And
that entire journey has been really great, being with this band for this long. But for me, I'm starting to long more and more for those more international adventures and touring the world a little bit more, like I did when I was 18, 19 years old, playing for metal bands. So for me, I really enjoyed my time in the US so far, and meeting people that, for example, I met Zach Robinson, who is nominated for an Emmy right now. He did a lot of movie soundtracks also for Netflix, for a lot of awesome Cobra Kai, for example, for a lot of awesome Netflix stuff. I met with Adam Jones from Tool because I got to play with them last year. And it just everything feels much bigger, of course, than in a very small country where you kind of have limited possibilities of meeting interesting people and collaborating with interesting people. So at the moment, I personally feel like I did everything that you can do here. I played all the venues I wanted to play. I played all the stadiums, the 2 stadiums I really wanted to play. All the festivals I really wanted to play. I got to play on these really cool records. I got to do the radio thing, the TV thing, and all of that. And it's very, very cool, but it always feels very small. Like, also the Austrian Grammys are kind of hilarious. It's just everything is very cute and small, and they try really hard so that you actually feel somewhat important as a musician if you have accomplished anything significant here. But it's just all super small. But there are some great bands for sure. So maybe next time when you come here, you can check out the Donauinselfest, which is actually, that's the world record for the biggest music festival in the world.
Wow.
Because it's free. So that's why so many people are coming. And that's kind of the highlight, because there are, I don't even know how many stages. There must be like 20, 30 stages, probably even more. And millions and millions and millions of people coming. And I think that's really cool to check out, because there's, a rock metal stage, there's a pop stage, there's a folk stage, there's pretty much everything. And it's a pretty cool experience, I think. The only thing is that everyone's coming there with public transportation, so it might take a while to get back to the hotel.
No, it's all right to take the helicopter. It's fine.
Just wait it out.
Yeah. You talked about, just one more sort of question that I thought might be interesting is you talked about sort of how the sort of relative excitement of stuff, how you've lived in Vienna for a long time, so you see a lot of these things and it's not maybe so exciting to you as it would be for someone that hasn't been before. How does that relate at all to, for example, now that your channel's grown quite a lot compared to say the early stages? Do you still feel the same reward from a good video as you did before, or do you feel it more so now? Like, how does that relate?
For me, the pressure is a little bit bigger now, because not because I kind of crave the attention of everyone. It's not that so much. For me, the pressure is on because I just want to be the best at what I'm doing. And I want to feel like I'm doing a good job. So whenever I have a video that's not performing as expected, or not doing, or where I just feel I could have done that better, but for some reason I didn't, I feel pretty bad about it compared to 3 years ago, where every kind of upload was a big adventure and you're not really sure what doing a good job even means, because you're just trying out the craziest stuff, and most of the time it doesn't work, and it's not your main project. It's just for fun, YouTube for fun, basically. But now, since there are almost 1 million subscribers on the channel, that I think do have some kind of expectation when it comes to the content, I do feel a lot of pressure sometimes, not because of that audience, but mainly because of me. Because I want to write the best songs, I want to have the most unique ideas, I want to present stuff that people haven't seen before, in the best case. So that can be a little bit difficult sometimes when it comes to the idea phase, as you mentioned, when you feel like nothing is good enough, really. Is this really worth pursuing? Because once you commit to an idea, it takes me sometimes 3 or 4 days to make that video. So if after 2 days you feel like, oh, maybe this wasn't a great idea at all, but you still have to finish it. So it does get a little bit more complicated now that the channel is growing, but I think it's all my own fault, basically, and I care way too much about it. I think most people are a bit more relaxed, and that's the better way to go for it. But my girlfriend, she's from Colombia, and she's amazing, and she's helping me with so many things. She always says it's a very Austrian thing to just be very on time and do this, and then you do that, and you expect these results. It didn't perform as expected. Now you have to punish yourself for it. It's kind of this mentality that I grew up with. Maybe the typical. I think people know that from. They refer to it as kind of the German attitude of the working ethics. I think the Austrians are sometimes even worse, I guess.
Nice.
But I definitely don't want to complain about it at all, because it's been amazing, and I'm super grateful for that people are still watching after all these years, because I started out as a guitar lesson channel essentially, and I completely abandoned that 6 or 7 months ago, because I felt like I said a lot of things already, and I just want to test how far or how big I can grow the channel. And most of the people watching these videos now are probably not even musicians or guitar players, because you don't have to be in order to enjoy some of the videos that I'm doing now. So people have been very, very kind with the changes in direction so far and all the crazy experiments. So I shouldn't be so stressed about it, but I like to talk about it because I know that a lot of other creators are stressing out a lot, and they always feel like they're alone. And we have a little self-help WhatsApp group where a lot of these people are in. Also Finn is in there, so that it doesn't feel so alone.
That's cool. It's a cool idea, having that kind of being able to communicate like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, nice, man. Well, hopefully that's given an interesting sort of insight into your, life behind the scenes a little bit. So if we want to finish up, we can, I need a question for the next guest. It can be as unusual as your one, if you want it to be, or it can be any direction you like, and an artist that you'd like to recommend to the world.
Okay. So my question, I'm just really interested about this, because in a previous podcast I did, I think 2 weeks ago, we went down a rabbit hole for 1.5 or 2 hours out of nowhere. That was about AI. I think it's kind of the buzzword nowadays. Everyone is talking about it, but I'm still very interested in this topic, especially connected with music. So I would love to know what your next guest thinks about the topic of AI-generated songs being allowed to maybe get a Grammy award in the future, or being recognized as works of art, because they can stir up some emotions maybe in people if they don't even know, for example, if a song is completely AI generated. I mean, at the moment they don't sound that great most of the time, but I think in a couple of years this will be a pretty big discussion. So my question to the next guest would be if it's okay that the next Grammy in 2 or 3 years in, for example, the rock or metal genre would go to some kind of AI band, or if it's the worst thing that will ever happen to music.
Nice.
I know it's kind of, everyone's talking about that right now, but I'm just interested in hearing people's thoughts on that, because it's so different.
Yeah.
You're either completely against it or kind of embracing it or don't know what to say. So I will tune in, and I hope I hear either a very angry rant about this topic, which is always entertaining, or maybe some new insight on, maybe it already happened next week, so I don't know.
Yeah, it might. Yeah, this might give it like 3 weeks. It might already be out of date. Yeah, cool. And if you have an artist that you think deserves a bit of love, musician or any sort of artist, really.
I really like a band that no one talks about, at least in Europe, and it's called Deer and Grey, which is a Japanese. I wouldn't call it metal. It is a metal band essentially, but very, very experimental. They started out as this kind of visual kei thing, I think, but then went into a super kind of brutal metal direction for a while, and now it's just very experimental, completely over the top and super interesting. So I think many, many more people should listen to this project. It would be really cool, and I would love to hear what people think about the last 3 albums. That would be cool.
Awesome, cool. Is there anything you want to sort of plug to finish up?
Well, the only thing really is that I'm going on tour starting September 27th until October 8th, which will be the first solo tour that I'm doing, since the songs are doing relatively well since this year on YouTube. So I will be coming to Germany, Netherlands, I'll be coming to the UK as well, Italy, Switzerland, probably something else I forgot. And it's going to be really cool, and I would love to see as many people as possible there. And there are, all the links are obviously wherever I can be found on the internet.
Nice. Will you be in Birmingham in the UK? Do you know?
Only London, sadly.
Okay,
but
nice.
If you want to make the trip, you're invited, of course. Just let me know.
Yeah. I'll have to have a look. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, man.
Thank you.